I call Alfred Naro.
Mr Speaker, I rise and stand and to speak on the second reading of the Objectionable Publications and Indecency Legislation Bill. But Mr Speaker, I can't help but make comment by Mr O'Rourke, who was on the Just Electoral Select Committee throughout the process, 8 written submissions, 3 oral submissions. Throughout that process, we had a departmental report, we had advisors, and throughout that process, not once did I hear some of those comments that have been made today in the House. It concerns me also too that that member can stand up here, who often talks about being tough on crime, and yet when it's important to care and to the welfare of vulnerable children, that Member of Parliament has said on behalf of New Zealand First they will not support this. Mr Speaker, he knows, he's been here long enough, he could put in an SOP, a supplementary order paper, who could explain and try to advocate and lobby for some of those changes that he's just talked about. Mr Speaker, it's shoddy, it's lazy. That's not the sort of behaviour that I think the members of Parliament should be, because this bill is an important bill. This bill is about protecting young children who are exploited. And to know that we've got support right across the House, bar New Zealand First, concerns many people, and I hope that the constituents of New Zealand First will take notice of that speech and of that member that represents the party. Just nitpicking, not picking on the important issues. So let's think about what's important to this. This government saw it important to address these issues that in December of 2014, over in London, along with 48 countries and international organisations, 48 countries and international organisations signed up to a statement of action at the We Protect Summit in London, and the aim was about addressing the issues of child sexual exploitation right across the world. This is an issue not just for New Zealand, but internationally and globally. This is an issue that's important to the heart of many people and to many communities that I'm sure that Mr O'Rourke will know about. Mr Speaker, this bill in its purpose statement simply says this. The key purpose of this bill is to implement the government's post-election plan to increase penalties for producing, trading or possessing child pornography. That's about as simple as you get. That's the clear purpose of it. The government's objective is to ensure that sentences for child pornography offences reflect the seriousness of the offending and send a strong message. Send a strong message, Mr Rourke. So we debated this in Select Committee, and the unanimous view at Select Committee was a full recommendation not to change the bill as it came into the Select Committee. Mr Speaker, unlike other jurisdictions, New Zealand doesn't have a distinct child exploitation material offence. Material is a subject of publications that are objectionable under Films, Videos and Publication Act 1993. So we believe that's important, that it's an omnibus bill. It has 3 different acts that we need to impact and affect the change. And so here's the reasons why we think that's absolutely important. The Office of Film and Literature Classification is responsible for determining what is objectionable, ensuring that all publications are dealt with in a uniform and consistent manner. Mr Speaker, to that end, we know that the submissions that came through helped to address these. I want to go through some of the clauses that I think are really important. Out of the 8 submissions, 3 oral submissions, there were 3 key focus areas that came to our attention. And maybe Mr O'Rourke wasn't awake at those times, but here it is, I'll read it for him. Increased penalties, possession of electronic publications, and presumption of imprisonment for repeat offenders. So let's go through some of those, Mr O'Rourke. First, increased penalties, because that's the issue of contention for New Zealand First, who again, I'm absolutely surprised, because we had a unanimous view, we were working collegially. This is an important bill, Mr O'Rourke, important bill to New Zealanders. So let's talk about some of the offences that were there. The bill increases the maximum penalties for objectionable publication offences as follows. Possession of an objectionable publication under Section 13A of the Classification Act from 5 years in its current state to a maximum of 10 years. We believe that's fair. That's an increase from 5 to 10. Import or export of an objectionable publication, Section 209, Clause 5 of the Customs and Excise Act from 5 years to 10 years. We believe that's important. So here's maybe the contention. The supply, distribution and making of an objectionable publication, Section 124 of the Classification Act, from 10 years to 14 years. Mr. Speaker, we know that some submitters were concerned about this because of the anomaly that could create, and people thinking about these issues of offence as compared to physical issues of offence. What we drew along with officials is that the material that's often been exposed is a material that is a physical offence and a sexual offence, often to children, which we know is abhorrent to all New Zealanders, to all of those around the world as well. So we believe that the offences in their increase does send a very strong message as well. Just to pick up on the point that Mr. Clendon made in regards to incarceration, and does it have an impact and effect to rehabilitating? We believe that yes, it does. It sends a strong message, but the research also shows that it's in that process of incarceration, what is the rehabilitation that's important? This government has ensured that we put extra resources, support and help. I've even been down to see some of those programs down in Spring Hill Prison. I went down to see Saili Matangi, which is a program to help rehabilitate offenders, not with this offence, but with other offences. But it's the belief of this government, working with the Department of Corrections, that with incarceration, good rehabilitation, we do see changes in the behaviour of those that are in prison for their offences. Mr. Speaker, I want to pick up on another one of the key points that were picked up. Clause number 5, the possession of electronic publications. And we know that was a concern, and as was mentioned by Mr. Clendon, the ISP providers talked about the concern about this. This amendment is for the avoidance of doubt, and it was clear about that. We believe that that was really important because there was a loophole that allowed for others to view the material, but because they had not downloaded the material or saved it onto their hard drives, then they could find a legitimate way illegally of avoiding any forms of imprisonment or any forms of charges as well. And so we believe that this was an important aspect to that. We did pick up on the point that Vodafone made, which was important around their concerns around unintended consequences. We believe that in that negotiation or conversation and debate, they did talk to us around the checks and balances that they have to ensure that for certain time periods where that was there, they're often scanning their material, looking to see what's there, what's not acceptable. So for them, I think we came to a place where even they could agree that Clause 5 was important. It shouldn't be changed. It should be included in there. Clause 5 is not intended to widen the definition of possession. Instead, it simply affirms in legislation the approach already taken by the courts. As such, ISPs, telecommunication carriers and network providers will not be subject to any laws under the proposed amendment. Mr. Speaker, I want to also draw attention to a final comments, and this is in regards to the harmful digital communications bill. There was some conversation by submitters that talked about the fact is that we've got two bills, and why isn't it that we couldn't sort of include those all into one? So in regards to the harmful digital communications bill, we know that this bill in particular, the digital aspects of the bill connect with harmful digital communications bill, and would prefer to be addressed in one large piece of legislation. But for us, both bills are different. One mitigates the harm around cyberbullying and digital harassment. And so therefore it's important that this provides a civil regime and an enforcement so we can appoint an approved agency and a provider that can allow to mitigate those issues. And we believe that that's important to receive, assess and be able to deal with complaints that come through. Where the Objectionable Publications and Indecency legislation bill has a broader focus than communication publications that occur in the digital realm, and we believe that this bill is important to that issue as well. Mr. Speaker, I believe that this is a good bill. I look forward to the committee stage. I look forward to Mr. O'Rourke putting an SOP because I think that's important to this bill. But Mr. Speaker, that we believe that there was support around this bill. So despite the banter that we've just had, I think what is important, Mr. Speaker, is that the key elements of the bill are supported right across the House. We believe it will protect. We believe that it will provide a regime that's important to enforce a very strong message so that the crime sort of fits the offence that has been made, especially to children and those who are vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to its second reading. Look forward to its committee stage in the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.